Joshua John Lucey, the court hearing was the then president of the Rebels Logan chapter, is accused of organising the group, ensuring the chase down of Cranston so he could be shot. But Payne's lawyers claim the shooting was in defence, while Lucey's defence refute claims that this was a pre-arranged setup.
You've just seen it. Joshua Lucey, dressed sharp, shoulders back, walking through the cold corridors of the Justice Building. Cameras click. Reporters shout his name. But he doesn't flinch. He's been here before. This isn't the image most people picture when they think of a career criminal. There's no chaos, no shootout, no high-speed chase. Just a man who looks more like a former bank manager than a bikie enforcer. But that's exactly who Joshua Lucey is. Both things at once. His story is one of Australia's most jarring criminal transformations. From managing bank branches and working with superannuation funds, to overseeing drug deals, organizing violent ambushes, and standing trial alongside some of the country's most notorious outlaw bikie figures. Over the past decade, Lucey has been tied to the Rebels, the Bandidos, and even the Comancheros, clubs that define the nation's outlaw landscape. He's faced drug trafficking charges, been accused in gangland shootings, and served as muscle in one of Queensland's most dangerous syndicates. And yet, here he is again, calm, collected, and somehow still walking free. This is the story of Joshua John Lucey, from corporate respectability to bikie domination. Long before Joshua Lucey's name appeared on police bulletins, it appeared on business cards. He was clean-cut, professional, and moving upward, not through club ranks or criminal networks, but through some of Australia's biggest financial institutions. Lucey worked for Suncorp. He held a position at Q Super. He was even recruited to manage a branch for the Commonwealth Bank. His future looked stable, legitimate, almost corporate to a fault. But behind that neatly pressed shirt was a man drawn to something else. Power, adrenaline, and a loyalty that could only be earned in blood and fire. Somewhere along the line, no one's quite sure when, Lucey made a quiet pivot, and it didn't take long for that pivot to become a plunge. Once his employers discovered his growing connection to the Rebels Motorcycle Club, his banking career came to a swift end. But Lucey didn't stumble. He leaned into it. By 2014, he had already embedded himself deeply within the club's operations, not as a prospect, not as an observer, as Sergeant-at-Arms of the Rebels Tweed Heads chapter, one of the most feared positions in the outlaw hierarchy. The role wasn't symbolic, it was enforcement. Lucey became the one who handled problems, collected debts, and sent messages to anyone foolish enough to cross the club. But the intimidation was only the beginning. That same year, Lucey found himself at the center of Task Force Maxima's sweeping investigation into bikie-led drug trafficking syndicates operating across southeast Queensland. The scope of the operation was massive: millions of dollars in drugs, dozens of raids, and a coordinated effort to cripple organized crime at its core. When police raided Lucey's connected properties, they uncovered $5 million worth of illicit drugs, including meth, cocaine, ecstasy, cannabis, steroids, and hydroponic equipment. For Task Force Maxima, it was a major blow against the club network. For Lucey, it marked his first major fall. At just 28 years old, he became the first person charged under Queensland's anti-bikie laws for recruiting others into a criminal organization while trafficking drugs. It was a landmark case, one meant to send a message. Lucey was arrested, denied bail, and remanded in custody. Eventually, he pleaded guilty to 6 serious charges, including trafficking ecstasy pills and supplying cocaine. But the outcome left many stunned. After just 9 months on remand, Lucey was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but with a suspended sentence. He walked out, legally free, not because he was innocent, but because he had already served enough time inside. The courts believed the lesson had been learned. It hadn't. That conviction didn't end his bikie career. It cemented it. What should have been a cautionary tale became a turning point. The banker was gone. Joshua Lucey was now full-time club muscle, and his ambitions were only growing. By 2019, Joshua Lucey's reputation in the outlaw bikie world had grown, and so had the violence surrounding him. No longer just an enforcer, Lucey had taken on a commanding role. He was now the president of the Rebels Logan chapter, a powerful position in a region known for heavy bikie activity. With that title came respect and enemies. The most dangerous of those enemies turned out to be Harley Cranston, a member of the rival Bandidos. Their paths collided inside the Logan Hyperdome shopping center, a seemingly ordinary public place that would become the site of one of Queensland's most brazen bikie-related ambushes. The confrontation started inside. Heated words, glares, threats. But what followed wasn't just a scuffle. According to police, Lucey and 8 of his associates had orchestrated a planned ambush. They spread out through restaurants in the center, watching Cranston, waiting. They were all tied to outlaw motorcycle clubs, all ready for something to go down. Cranston, reportedly brandishing a machete, eventually exited the center. That's when it happened. Lucas James Payne, one of Lucey's men, approached in a vehicle. As Cranston turned toward him, Payne reached for a pistol in his car's center console and fired a single shot, hitting Cranston in the leg. The shooting was fast, calculated, and unmistakably targeted. Police swooped in quickly. Surveillance footage, witness reports, and internal investigations tied the incident back to Lucey and his crew. He was arrested in Darwin, then extradited back to Queensland to face charges. The allegations were serious: planning an ambush, coordinating the movements of bikie associates, and participating in a violent retaliation that played out in front of the public. Lucey pleaded not guilty. So did Payne. While Payne admitted to firing the weapon, he claimed it was self-defense, that Cranston's machete posed an immediate threat. Lucey, for his part, denied orchestrating anything. The court case dragged on for 2 years. It became clear the prosecution was trying to make an example of Lucey, but the evidence didn't stick. In June 2021, Lucey was found not guilty. Payne wasn't so lucky. He was convicted and sentenced to 13 years in prison, but Lucey once again walked free. It was the second time in less than a decade that he had narrowly escaped serious prison time, and to many in law enforcement, it felt like déjà vu. Despite the surveillance, the planning, and the bikie involvement, Lucey had dodged another bullet. His defense argued that proximity wasn't proof, and the court agreed. But this wasn't a clean break. If anything, it raised his status further. To his enemies, he was dangerous. To his allies, he was loyal. And to Task Force Maxima, he was now firmly on the radar. Lucey wasn't just a former banker gone rogue. He was a player in one of the most volatile gang conflicts in Australia. And the worst was yet to come. In the aftermath of the Logan Hyperdome case, Joshua Lucey might have been legally free, but the tension between rival clubs was far from over. By 2023, that tension exploded again, this time in a far wealthier postcode. The target? A multi-million-dollar mansion in the southern Brisbane suburb of Robertson. The crime? A drive-by shooting, bold, loud, and unmistakably deliberate. The mansion was owned by Justin Chongtan, a co-owner of Vogue Industries, a high-end car modification business. But beneath the polished rims and custom paint jobs, Vogue Industries had a serious problem. It had allegedly angered members of a powerful outlaw network. According to police, tensions began brewing after $2 million reportedly vanished from a bikie-linked business, money tied to a car raffle operation associated with Kiro member Jason Roberts, a known Comanchero associate. Roberts believed Vogue Industries played a part in the theft. That's when bullets started flying. Police alleged that the shooting was a retaliatory strike, a message sent in steel and fire. Joshua Lucey was one of 6 men charged in relation to the attack. Though his exact role wasn't laid out in full detail, investigators confirmed that Lucey was deeply involved in the planning and execution. By this time, he had reportedly left the rebels. Rumors swirled that he was aligning himself with the Bandidos, while others suspected he was trying to defect to the Comancheros. The shifting allegiances only added to the chaos. To law enforcement, Lucey wasn't just a member anymore. He was a roving enforcer, willing to work across gang lines to settle debts, make threats, or collect what was owed. He'd become what some detectives described as a freelance standover man, not bound by colors, but by power. In the Robertson shooting case, 4 other men were charged alongside Lucey. Court documents painted him as the man tasked with violence, a debt collector, a club muscle, someone called in when talking failed. The case exposed a deeper layer of bikie operations, where business and brutality overlapped, where even luxury car companies weren't safe from underworld retribution. Despite the gravity of the allegations, Lucey was granted bail in Brisbane Magistrates Court. Again. This time, the court imposed a $100,000 surety and fitted him with a GPS tracker. He was to remain under close surveillance. Yet once more, he was free to walk the streets, though now tracked by satellite, an enforcer with a curfew. The incident rattled Brisbane's southern suburbs. A drive-by in a quiet, upscale neighborhood brought renewed public pressure on Task Force Maxima, who had been watching Lucey for years. It was no longer just bikie-on-bikie violence. This was spilling into civilian areas, bringing the underworld into the open. And through it all, Lucey remained composed. No public statements, no guilty plea, no break in the facade. He had survived another major incident, stayed out of prison, and continued to move between Queensland's most dangerous networks. But even with a GPS bracelet locked to his ankle, Joshua Lucey wasn't slowing down. In fact, the next time Task Force Maxima came for him, the charges would be even more serious and far more difficult to escape. By early 2025, Joshua Lucey's name was once again in the headlines, and this time, the spotlight was even brighter. Police weren't dealing with club scuffles or retaliatory shootings anymore. What they were tracking now was a massive drug trafficking operation, spanning southeast Queensland and allegedly connected to some of the most powerful bikie syndicates in the country. The case didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of months of surveillance, encrypted message interceptions, and targeted raids carried out by Task Force Maxima in conjunction with the AA Ridge Criminal Investigative Unit. These weren't random street-level busts. This was an attempt to dismantle a well-organized, high-value syndicate, one they believed Joshua Lucey played a critical role in. In February 2025, police moved in. Lucey, along with 2 alleged KERO bikie associates, was arrested. The charges: drug trafficking and criminal recruitment. For the 3rd time in a decade, he was staring down serious time behind bars, and once again, he found himself at the center of a national crime story. But the operation uncovered far more than just a few bags of contraband. Police raided multiple locations, seizing large quantities of methamphetamine, cocaine, and other narcotics. They also retrieved weapons, encrypted communication devices, and documents believed to be linked to an expansive drug network. Authorities believed this wasn't just a side hustle. This was a major enterprise, structured, protected, and profitable. And Lucey wasn't a passive observer. He was considered a key figure. What made this case different wasn't just the drugs. It was the communication trail. Investigators had tapped into a series of encrypted message platforms. Within them, they found a spiderweb of conversations, code words, and logistical planning, shipments, drop points, distribution chains. According to detectives, Lucey's name kept coming up. But even with all the tech, the data, and the heat, the prosecution faced a familiar problem: evidence versus implication. Just like in the Logan Hyperdome case, proving intent and more importantly, proving action, was tricky. While the messages hinted at Lucey's involvement, the content was still open to interpretation. Defense lawyers moved quickly to challenge the allegations, framing Lucey as a scapegoat, someone caught in the dragnet of a larger investigation without clear, direct proof linking him to the trafficking itself. Still, the police pushed forward. Lucey was charged. The bail application was fierce. The public pressure was high. But once again, he got out. Despite the gravity of the charges, Lucey was granted bail, though under extraordinary conditions. He was electronically monitored, restricted in his movements, barred from associating with known criminals, and forbidden from leaving the state. It was, essentially, a prison without walls. But Lucey didn't flinch. In public, he carried the same calm, detached demeanor that had marked every one of his previous arrests. To police, this case was the big one, the net that would finally hold. But Lucey had been here before, and unless the prosecution could tie his name to something irrefutable, a message, a drop, a phone call, he still had a path out. Behind the scenes, the courtroom war was just beginning, and with the Comancheros now linked to the operation, the stakes were higher than ever. As Lucey awaited trial in 2025, a darker shadow loomed over the entire case: the Comancheros. Out of all Australia's outlaw motorcycle gangs, the Comancheros carried perhaps the most feared reputation. Their name was synonymous with large-scale drug trafficking, violent feuds, and transnational links stretching from Sydney to Dubai. And according to Task Force Maxima, Joshua Lucey wasn't just loosely associated with them, he was becoming deeply embedded. At the time of his arrest, Lucey was allegedly in the process of shifting allegiances. Having already distanced himself from the rebels and floated around the bandidos, he was now believed to be courting the Comancheros, either as a full member or close associate. This wasn't just club hopping. In the outlaw world, switching sides, especially from the rebels to the Comancheros, was dangerous, both politically and physically. It was also rare. But Lucey had always moved differently. He wasn't loyal to colors. He was loyal to opportunity, and the Comancheros offered plenty of it. Police intelligence suggested that Lucey's connection to the Comancheros wasn't casual. He wasn't just hanging around the clubhouse. He was allegedly acting on their behalf, running enforcement jobs, distributing drugs, and helping recruit new members for their Queensland network. Encrypted messages seized during the 2025 investigation reportedly linked him to logistics, movement of product, and coordination with other criminal figures. These weren't vague allegations. They were detailed, layered, and carefully constructed through months of surveillance. But Lucey's legal team struck back. They claimed that the supposed connections were circumstantial. The messages could have referred to anyone. The surveillance, they argued, lacked specificity. There were no fingerprints on the drugs, no direct orders, no recorded handovers. It was all implication, dangerous, but not definitive. And so, once again, Lucey remained on bail, monitored, restricted, but still not behind bars. Still, law enforcement wasn't letting go. Behind the scenes, police intensified their focus on the Comancheros' Queensland operations, hoping to build a broader conspiracy case that could finally trap Lucey in a web too large to slip through. But Lucey wasn't just sitting around waiting for a verdict. He had learned from past arrests. Every move was calculated. He didn't break bail. He didn't speak publicly. He followed court orders to the letter, all while maintaining that he had no involvement in any trafficking and no formal ties to the Comancheros. Yet the truth remained elusive. To law enforcement, Lucey was a seasoned operator, someone who had learned how to exist inside the bikie world without leaving fingerprints, someone who understood the law's limits and how to work just beyond them. To his critics, he was a manipulator, a man who used every resource, legal or otherwise, to stay one step ahead of justice. And to his supporters, few as they were, he was a survivor. A man caught up in a world of chaos who kept walking away when others fell. As the case moved toward trial, that central question lingered. Was Joshua Lucey just a man on the periphery, or the one calling the shots? As the court dates loomed and the headlines slowed, Joshua Lucey entered a strange kind of limbo. Not convicted, but far from free. The walls weren't made of concrete this time. They were built from conditions, court-imposed restrictions that monitored his every movement. A GPS tracker locked to his ankle, a curfew that barred him from staying out late, a list of banned associates that included nearly everyone he once called a brother. It wasn't prison, but it wasn't freedom either. Yet even under these constraints, Lucey remained defiant. He'd faced down serious charges in 2014, walked free. He was acquitted in 2021 after being accused of orchestrating a gang ambush. And now, in 2025, with drug trafficking charges hanging over him and suspected Comanchero ties, he was still out on bail. It wasn't luck, it was experience. He had learned how to survive in the gray areas, never fully committing, never fully escaping. It was a tightrope walk between violence and legality, loyalty and liability. A balancing act that most people in the outlaw world didn't pull off for long, but time was running out. The pressure on law enforcement to make something stick was mounting. Public trust had worn thin. How could one man, tied to multiple outlaw gangs, caught in surveillance, repeatedly arrested, keep walking away? The answer wasn't simple. Lucey's legal team worked relentlessly, tearing down every piece of circumstantial evidence, challenging the meaning behind every intercepted message, every vague reference in encrypted texts. Without hard proof, drugs in hand, direct admissions, weapons traced, the courts had to follow the law, not the narrative. But there was something else going on too, a broader question about Lucey's life and whether he could ever step away from it. Because even if the court cleared him, what was left? He couldn't return to a bank job. He couldn't live a quiet life in the suburbs. His face was too known, his past too deep, and his present, monitored, watched, doubted, made it impossible to disappear. That's the trap of the outlaw life. There's no clean exit, no peaceful retirement. If he turned his back on the clubs, he'd be a traitor. If he stayed loyal, he'd always be a target. For police, for rivals, for the next young buck trying to climb the ranks. And somewhere in between was Joshua Lucey, the bank manager turned enforcer, the man who managed to survive nearly a decade inside Australia's most violent underworld, dodging bullets, convictions, and betrayals. But for how much longer? Each courtroom appearance brought new cameras. Each police operation put more pressure on the justice system to deliver a conviction. And every time Lucey appeared calm, silent, untouched, the myth of his untouchability grew. But myths don't last forever. Eventually, even the most calculated figures make mistakes. Someone talks. A message gets intercepted. A deal goes wrong. And for Lucey, the next slip might be the one that finally ends the run. For now, he waits. His future, his freedom, and maybe even his safety, still hanging in the balance. The courts will decide his guilt. But the streets, they don't wait that long. Because in the outlaw world, there's always someone watching.